Yo, what is up, everyone? Happy Friday. Welcome to the Tales of Web3, Season 3, Episode 5. Today, we are honored to invite my friend Jacquelyn, the co-founder of Token Relations, and previously a professional crypto reporter many years, to talk about her story and the exciting stuff, the lessons learned in all these years in her crypto journey. So yeah, to start, please give us a little bit more intro about yourself and the founding story behind Token Relations.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on, Ricky. Super excited to talk to you. And I feel like we've known each other for a while, so it's fun to sit down and actually have like a formal conversation. But you kind of mentioned my background. I was a reporter at TechCrunch for about a year and a half, 2 years, covering crypto. I was a senior crypto reporter there. I helped lead the coverage, essentially built it out from the ground up. There were two other people working on it when I first joined, but I was also the last man standing covering crypto because I feel like a lot of people, they cycle in, they cycle out.
100%.
And I had a podcast there as well. And essentially, we had a newsletter and all these different things. And like my job was really to build up the crypto coverage there because prior to me joining, it was like occasional article, it wasn't much. And I feel like for an industry of this size, you really need to dedicate a whole reporter or a whole team, frankly, to covering it. And I mean, we see this with like CoinDesk, the Block, Blockworks, etc. Like they all have designated companies to cover the news of this industry. But I was for a while a one-man show, which is kind of crazy.
It's
I covered
crazy.
everything. Yeah,
There's so
I
many
can't cover
sectors.
everything, but I
Yeah,
try.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And prior to that, I was actually at Blockworks for a brief amount of time. I covered crypto there. And then TechCrunch poached me, which is fine. That's, fair market. And prior to crypto, I was covering energy markets. I worked at Bloomberg covering oil trading, and then S&P covering energy markets more broadly. And at the time, energy markets have been around for probably a century, I would argue. And I just don't think that it was as innovative as I like. And I would like to be in like a fast-paced environment. I was always into crypto in the background. And so I was looking to essentially find a new job a few years back. And there was a job covering asset management or a job covering crypto at what was a small startup at the time, Blockworks. And I said, you know what? I was young. I didn't feel like, I don't have a mortgage. I don't have
Love
kids.
it.
If everything fails, fine. And every mentor in my life was telling me not to do it. They're like, what if Bitcoin goes to zero? And I'm like, what if? What if? And so essentially, I just kind of took the jump as many people in this industry do. And for me, I was a reporter for so long. So I had to have like a neutral stance. But I always say I'm a neutral, positive person when it comes to this industry. When I was a reporter, if you're going to be a tech reporter, you should be optimistic about tech. A lot of tech reporters today have a lot of doom and gloom,
Because it's
and I
good
just
for the
don't
attention,
understand.
man. Because people like that.
It could be good for click rates, but
Yeah.
I think on my conscience, I don't do things for click rates. I do it for, the truth.
That's nice.
And so, for me, covering crypto, it was a genuine passion. But as a reporter, you have to be neutral. You can't obviously, I wasn't shilling anything that I was involved in. Um, but at the same time, it felt like there was more to be done. And that being a reporter under a really big brand, even though TechCrunch was a great brand, it felt limiting in ways. So that's what led me to kind of start my own thing with Anthony Pompliano.
Let's go. We're gonna talk about token
Yeah.
relation and everything about it. But
Hmm.
before we dive into that, you're actually the first guest on this show out of like all the 20, 30 guests I had previously with like a reporting journalist background, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a general question, but can you share a little
Amazing.
bit more about like the perspective for you, right? With like a reporting background, right? What
Hmm.
how do you think is going on in the industry, right? And how your
Hmm.
background and like the journalism, Web3 reporting stuff like that, how you think about them, right? All these journalists and
Hmm.
reporters, and like just share a little bit about that for our audience.
Yeah, for sure. I think a sentiment that I share, and I know reporters do, as well as like founders, builders in the space, is that there's just a ton of noise. There's a lot of replicas. There's a lot of copy and paste. And so from my reporter background and into even where I am today, I have a podcast as well and then a business. It's about like sifting through the noise and really seeing what's valuable. And like we could have a bajillion layer ones, a bajillion layer twos, and it's not to say those aren't valuable, but it's like, okay, what makes you guys different, right? And I think it's all about like pushing through the noise and seeing like, does this really move the needle? And so when I was a reporter, I would get, hundreds of pitches to my inbox. And just because I couldn't cover everything doesn't mean not everything was important. I mean, granted, not everything was important, but that wasn't to say like if I said no, that like your company's announcement wasn't. And I think in general for the crypto space, especially being a reporter, things move extremely quickly. And like what could be an amazing topic or type of story this week might not be next week, or even it might be old news in a month. And I look back at some of my articles and I think about how, oh my gosh, this dated so well or this dated so poorly. And you can't predict the future. That's not our job. But our job is to really tell the stories of what founders are building or be able to inform people better. And so that was really always what I tried to do. And whenever I spoke with founders, I always took like their technical topics and tried to make it less technical, so everyone could understand it.
Really important.
Even then, it's crypto, so like it might still not be understandable, but I think that's like the big North Star here, and is like uncovering teams that might have been in their early stages or like just really seeing through.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about token relations.
Sure.
So I know why you started it, but like, how do you differentiate yourself with all these big players, right? The big boys in the market, and what is like
Yeah.
the special value props that you provide for your like customers or clients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think what token relations does, and we essentially named the company that because it is that definition, is providing token relations. It's not public relations, it's not
It's
marketing,
token.
but it's tokens, right? And I think we work with a lot of major blockchains, and then we also work with some projects and protocols as well that are, big or up and coming. And so for us, it's about really connecting like that top layer, the team behind the foundations, the teams in the labs, or those who are really building for X network, whatever you want to insert there, with their token holders, with their builders. Because it feels like it's almost like some CEO is in a like an ivory tower, and then you're down here building, and it's like you never actually get to
There's
connect
always
with
a gap.
them.
There's always a gap.
Right? And so we're trying to fill that gap. And it's through a relationship where like sometimes we'll do webinars or spaces or videos where it's like you could ask them questions. Here's a Q&A. Like go speak to the co-founder of this blockchain. They are right here. Ask them the question. And then other times, going back to the topic of like noise, there's so much noise in crypto that like if you're not constantly sitting on Twitter all day, which I know a lot of us are, you still miss things, or the algorithm might not put stuff on your feed.
Yes.
And so what we do is we gather all the information from the ecosystems that we work with, put it all in one place. So you could get it on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis, updates on like what's happening within each of these blockchains or protocols. And it's there, like you don't have to sit all day, every day, like scrolling to see if you're going to get all the updates. And even if you do get the updates, are you really engaging with them? Because like how much can a tweet really say? Or how much can like a post in Discord or Telegram really say? And so we're putting them out there in a sense that can better educate the token holders, the builders on chain, and make them more long-term thinking. And then for the builders on the chain, something that I think is so important, and another reason we built token relations is that I don't think, name a blockchain. Name any blockchain.
Sui.
Sui. I don't think Sui would ever have a problem getting coverage. Like maybe everything they announce doesn't get coverage from mainstream, but like if Sui pitched CoinDesk on something, I would say majority of the time CoinDesk would take it. But what about the builders on top of Sui? They're going to have a way harder time getting exposure, gaining an audience, really getting their name out there. And it's not to say those builders aren't important. They just don't have the amplification that a major blockchain would. And so what we try to do is really amplify the voices that are building on top of these chains too. Look how much this team did in volume. Look at the announcement that they just had. This is why it's important. A bunch of different things. And that's really how we think about it.
Why do you think the big, let's say, big media coverages or like these platforms, they're not reporting like these ecosystem apps are building on top of Sui? And like, do you think this is like a for example, right, you guys are getting started, and then right now you have enough
Hmm.
resources to focus on this market, right, where people are not talking about. Do you think this is something that
Yeah.
when you guys grow larger, right, if you become like the new Blockwork in the future, right, it's gonna be something that it's gonna be a problem that you guys will face as well?
Mm. Ideally, no, because like the mission for us is always to amplify, sure, the core network or chain, but also those building on top of it. I think that's really important to me, and I don't ever want to lose sight of that. But for these media outlets, a lot of it is about what's recognizable, right? And a lot of people, as like sad as it may be to just like explicitly say this, a lot of people would open a headline that says Solana did XYZ opposed to random DEX or DeFi aggregator did XYZ,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think
It's just the reality
99%
of
of
it.
people is doing this, right?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. And I don't want to speak on behalf of like all the news outlets out there, but it's not to say that those building on top of it aren't significant or aren't important. And I know that those who are very dedicated to these communities, they want to know about these chains, or I'm sorry, about these builders and projects, right? And so that's what we're doing is like, if you're an avid person within like the Avalanche ecosystem, you want to know about the projects that are building on Avalanche, right?
Yes.
And maybe a CoinDesk or a Blockworks or the Block might not highlight all these projects, but we will. And we're going to do it in a way that incentivizes the community to feel more long term thinking and engaged and like, oh, I actually know what's going on in Avalanche this week.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
As someone
Yeah.
who like what do you think about the chain landscape in Web3 right now? Because I know
Mm,
like a lot of your clients, you work with a lot of the chains ecosystems, right? As a retail
yeah.
investor or as a crypto DJ, right? The
Hmm.
only chains they're hearing about every single day is probably Solana. 80% Solana,
Hmm.
20%
Hmm.
Ethereum these days, or sometimes a little bit about Base, right? Like,
Right.
what do you think about like this, right? Like the
Hmm.
L2s, L1s, how the chains will evolve in the future? What is the competitive
Hmm.
landscape? Is there any hidden gem that you think are there because you already worked with them, but people are not seeing it yet, right? Just
Mm,
give us all
yeah.
about that, please.
Yeah. I mean, I I think all the ecosystems we work with are like not my children, but you know how you don't pick a favorite
Yeah,
child.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm not going to say like whether or not I love one more than the other. I think they all have different quirks. And I've been pretty outspoken like throughout my career as a reporter to the state that I believe in a multi-chain future. Maybe some of the ecosystems we work with don't feel that way at all, but I do, hence why we work with so many different ecosystems. I don't think there's going to be one winner. I think there will be a handful of winners and then a bunch of other chains that will succeed in their own right. Especially for the ones that really hone in on a specific niche, whether it's like gaming or institutional adoption or a DeFi angle that is for retail or a DeFi angle that's for TradFi. I think there's a lot of different sectors and buckets that each of them could fit into. In terms of the overall landscape in general, though, there's definitely a lot. Sometimes I see a new chain pop up and I'm like, is that necessary? But then there's also the notion that like if you launch a chain, there's more revenue streams or options to build out X company or X network into something that's bigger than just what it was, right? I saw yesterday that Ondo launched a layer one. I was at Ondo's
Oh,
summit and it was a
RWA.
great
Yeah,
event.
yeah, it's good. It's
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
one.
But I was like, why are they launching a layer one? And of course, you know, they explain their reasons and like, hey, they want to work with us, they could come talk to us. But I feel like not everyone needs it. And we'll see how it plays out. I'm an optimist in general. And I think if you have a community, if you have the volume, if you have the assets, and if you have a purpose, go crazy. Who am I to tell you not to do it? I really do believe in the free market and I like being surprised. I like seeing teams win. And so, like, Solana obviously is doing great right now, and I think they'll continue to do great, but that doesn't mean other chains won't, you know, accelerate. I remember in 2021, everyone was like, Solana's the Ethereum killer. And everyone in Ethereum was like, it's never going to touch us. Like, we're good. Don't worry about it. And now, fast forward to today, Solana's doing great, you know? And so I think that conversation is like very underrated. And I also think the move ecosystems are very interesting. You know, Sui, Aptos, Movement. I see a lot of value in those. I think they're differentiating themselves from the pack. I'm not sure if they're all like buddy buddy. I don't speak on that behalf, but I do see value on the move side as well.
Awesome. What do you think about the future of Ethereum though? Because I heard about a lot of like a lot of these Ethereum maxis actually
hmm
surrendered lately, right? They've been
hmm
outspoken for a long, long time. They finally surrender after ETH, I don't know, hit like $2,000,
Oh
stuff
God,
like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
2000.
and then like a
Yeah.
lot of people saying like it's already too late, right? You can see Vitalik
Right.
changed from like a philosopher or technology
Yeah.
evangelist into like this melody style character. He's
Yeah.
and do you think it's too late? How do you see
Mm.
Ethereum's future?
I think the L2s within the Ethereum ecosystem are not going to necessarily be hurt. Um, I don't think it's too late for them. I think for Ethereum itself, they've had a horrible marketing problem. They've always kind of seen themselves as we're Ethereum, you can't touch us. Like, and I'm speaking from, speculation and like
Yeah,
what I've picked up, but um, I think there was never a concern for Ethereum about competition. Even when Solana came up and people were calling it the Ethereum killer, which I don't think is a fair title to give it because it's its own entity, right? I
yeah,
don't think it existed to get rid of Ethereum, but you know what I mean. I think in terms of Ethereum, it's just there were so many problems and it's so slow. It almost reminds me of a massive corporation versus startup. The massive corporation, which I know Ethereum is decentralized, it's not a corporation, etc. But like let's say the foundation or the core developers building for it, they move so slowly.
yeah. That's so
And
true.
granted, these things do take time. It's really hard to build and or change a network. Like when the merge happened, I remember there was an analogy where it was like it's trying to fix an airplane while you're flying it in the sky. I can't even imagine how to do
I mean,
that,
that's what
and I
I
give them
like being a
credit.
founder too.
You
You know what
know?
I mean? I've heard about
Yeah,
similar
yeah, yeah.
analogy too.
Yeah. And so we got like what I would make an analogy of a massive corporation, and then the analogy of all these other chains that are moving faster and breaking things and testing things out, almost like a startup. And so, who is going to find out sooner if they're going to do like a product market fit or if they're going to be able to accelerate, especially with the change of market conditions? I would probably bet on this side,
Yes.
the startup like mentality opposed to the bureaucratic, slow moving entity. And I think for Ethereum, it's a shame, but I also think it's more for the L1 Ethereum. It's a shame. I think those L2s that are building on top of Ethereum, they're fine because they're moving with speed, they're moving with precision, and they're focusing on fixing the problems that Ethereum has created. And so for, L2s within the Ethereum ecosystem, I think there's promise. But for Ethereum itself, like I jokingly doom post about it all the time. But I'd love to see it come back and do great things, but I think it needs definitely a shakeup.
I think it will probably come back, but it need like a huge amount of time. Probably not even in
Yeah,
2025, right? If the
yeah.
reformation really started. What do you think about base versus Solana? Because a lot of people are saying
Mm,
base is probably one of the best L2s. As a Ethereum standing in the Ethereum maxi side of things, the base is the best
mm-hmm,
L2 we can get, right? Because it's for
mm-hmm,
consumer. But like you started seeing lately, a lot of these consumer applications launching on base, and a lot of these
mm-hmm,
founders building on base for almost like 2 years, 3 years, they move to Solana because there's
mm-hmm.
just no user, and like also like base sometimes there's still like their asset choose, right, launching on Coinbase. You saw the VVV, right, VVV stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and the virtual that
Yeah,
virtual is supposed to get on Coinbase, but instead they launched the VVV. Which, like, what do you think about that? Like just
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I have thoughts. I think for Base, I don't know what's going on internally between Base and Coinbase. I feel like maybe they want to have them operate as separate entities, but Base should be tapping into Coinbase's audience. They've got millions of
that's their
users. They're
advantage, right? That's a
KYC'd.
competitive advantage.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity or there's like a misalignment. And again, I can't speak to that internally because I'm not there, but from like an outsider looking in, it's definitely something where I'm like, you guys should be tapping into this and you're not. And maybe there's a reason. And then in terms of what you were talking about with the consumer chains, I think Base is and can be a consumer chain. And I think Solana definitely is and also can be. And I think the mind share for both are strong but different. I would argue that Bases has a lot of circulation around like Jesse Pollock and what he's built with like the on-chain economy, and he wants to bring everyone on chain. And for Solana, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about meme coins, but then there's also payments and stable coins and other things that Solana is integrating and creating. And so for me, I'm not a big fan of the dialogue on the internet where they're fighting, or it's like pulling mindshare from one to the other. I think to your point about startups or builders who start on one chain and then move to the other, that should be 100% their choice. And I think the cannibalism in the industry is just never a good look. Like if you have to fight publicly and say, come build on us, we're better, I just don't think that makes a good look for your chain. I always say that if you have to talk poorly about your competition, it says more about you than it does
I
about
actually
them.
agree with that.
So,
It's hurt you in the long term,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And I think if you are demonstrating and creating an environment that makes builders want to be there, it speaks for itself.
Awesome. Let's get back to you, the founder
Sure.
journey. Like how's your life as a founder right now? Are you happier than before? Are you more like what is your mindset? Give us a little bit more about
Yeah.
the shift, the things that you
Hmm.
learned ever since becoming a founder. It's almost a year right now, right?
Yeah, it's almost
Like
a year. I mean, I was doing it in the background prior to launching it in April. We were working on it in stealth, as the people in crypto say. And so I guess it has been a year essentially because we started in the beginning of 2024. And to your question, am I happier? 100%. Am I more stressed? Also 100%. But I think I have a lot of more empathy for founders than when I was a reporter.
I saw your
They
tweet. You
juggle.
wite about that,
Yeah.
tweet, right? Or an article. I think I saw it somewhere.
Yeah. I have said like, especially when we first launched, I did a couple of interviews, and it's so different being on this side than being the interviewer. Like we're having a conversation here, and I felt like if this was going to be in an article, the stress is so much higher. But then when you're the one reporting, it's like I don't know. I feel on the founder side, there's so much you have to do, and you wear like a billion hats. And even when I feel like I'm, quote, done for the day, I'm never done. There's always something else that could be done. There's always something else I could create, do, push forward. And I think the biggest thing is just like being able to engage with our community properly, listen to feedback, and iterate on things. And this is something I've heard other founders do too, is like it's so important to not just like sit on a sinking ship. And that's not the case with what's token relations is, but it's like if something isn't working,
Pivot
figure out how to
fast.
fix it.
Or
Yeah. If the ship is sinking, find a way to plug it up or get on a different ship. And for us, like we've seen success in our newsletters and like what people like. And then we've also seen that, hey, people might being like we with the webinars that we do, for example, initially we did like Luma invites, and for some of them it was like nobody wants to log into a Luma and sit on a Zoom and join the webinar,
I think
and
that
it
is
made me
pretty.
realize,
It is pretty odd. Like thinking about like doing that.
yeah, yeah, and no, and like that was a learning lesson in the sense that it's like, okay, so let's meet the community where they are. Let's meet them on Twitter. Let's meet them on Discord. Let's do like a live video stream. And it was like night and day.
That's nice.
So much easier, so much better. And I think you just always have to meet your community where they're at and like respond to their feedback. Even if they're not directly saying, this sucks, they will tell you in other ways. And so you have to like fix and improve on things in that matter. So, yeah.
So you're happier, a little bit more stressed. I would say a lot more stressed, probably. But
Yeah, no, I'm definitely happier. And I think, I've always been like a high stress, hardworking person. Like even when I was at TechCrunch, I would definitely work more than I needed to. But when it's your own company, it's rewarding in the sense that like everything that you do benefits the business, hopefully, or like you're reinvesting time into the business. Whereas like if you work for someone else, you're just,
yeah,
pumping up their bags or
yeah.
you're pumping up the corporation, And so for me, it's like I slack, it only hurts me. It only hurts the company. And if I work harder, it only helps.
That's awesome.
So I prefer to work harder.
I think that's all like why all these founders are extremely motivated, right? Self-motivated,
Yeah.
pumping their own bags,
Yeah.
which is cool.
It's
And
up to
there's also
you.
like
Yeah.
something we wanted to do, right? Besides the bags, which is extremely important
Yes.
too.
Hmm.
What is the
Yeah.
most, if I may ask, what is the most painful lessons you learned in 2024? Or like not even painful, just like the most
Ooh,
valuable stuff, you're able to
yeah,
learn.
no, that's a good one. I think that something someone told me when I started my company is that like you're gonna have a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and it's like you should remain neutral throughout it all.
Emotionally.
And yes,
Yes.
emotionally. So like even if I get like the best deal ever, and then one week like the deal falls through, I should remain
So many
neutral
of these
throughout it
happen,
all.
just so many.
Yeah, and I feel like that applies to like crypto in general. Like even with like the market volatility, like relax, sit on your hands and just wait, or, like do something about it. And so for me, I think one of the biggest lessons is like remaining neutral and like, sure, I could celebrate the wins, I could acknowledge the bad moments, but like just stay level headed through it all is so important because there's going to be moments where like you're tested as a founder. And then there's going to be moments where like you're like, this is the best thing ever. Like, we're
I'm
winning. Everything's
unstoppable.
so great. Yeah, I'm unstoppable. And you are stoppable. Everyone is stoppable. No one's invincible in work, in personal life, everything. And so I think that's a really big lesson for me. And also that, like, nothing is necessarily guaranteed, even if you think it is.
That's
We've been very fortunate in the sense that we work with over a dozen blockchains. We work with a lot of major ones, but like we're very particular about the teams that we work with, and I'm sure vice versa. And so even if you think like, oh, we're about to land this, or oh, they said they want to do it, it's not guaranteed. Like,
100%.
and I think a lot of people who do sales or BD, they know this. They know that nothing is guaranteed. You could even be like, we're about to sign a contract, and then like they ghost you, and that's just the reality of business, I guess. I don't know. I can't speak to everyone else's actions, but I think again it goes back to the level-headedness though, and being like realistic with yourself that it's okay. Everything happens for a reason, and that as long as the business is doing well, that's what matters, and just keep moving forward.
Keep action, right? Acting is the most important. If you let
Hmm.
emotion kicks in, your action become twisted, and then like you're gonna make bad
Yeah.
judgments without clear
Yeah,
thinking.
100%. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think that's true. Like, don't be emotional about
But it's hard.
things.
It's super
Like,
hard. I mean,
I
what are some of the okay? How do you stay calm on the most like anesthetic or like the down the lowest lows? Like is there any tricks
know.
or anything you practice,
That is such a good
or you
question.
just
I'm
tell
trying to
yourself?
think of like, uh, I think maybe going for a walk or taking a step back. If you feel that you're about to get angry about something, and I'm a pretty chill, relaxed
I
person.
can tell.
I don't really get angry. Thank you. But like if you find yourself frustrated, just take a step back if you can. If you can take a step back, talk it through. Um, I don't think acting on emotion is ever a smart move, whether it's in business, personal life, trading. Acting on emotion rarely gets you somewhere good, right?
Yes.
And so if you could control your emotion and breathe and realize it's not the end of the world, and even if it is the end of the world, even if you got liquidated,
Oh my
guess
god,
what?
that's
You still get to move
that's
on,
terrible.
And I'm not saying we have, and I'm not saying I've ever had that happen, but like I see this happen on the timeline and I'm like, damn, that sucks. And then I keep scrolling,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then it's like, what do those people do? They just go to the next day, hopefully. They just move on. And I think that applies to everything in business. Like, you just have to move on. And I think if you could read the writing on the wall, more than likely, that that's the reality, right? So,
I think that's deep, but that's also good.
thank
Good
you.
advice. Like I've heard like a lot of times like if you realize you're making a decision based on emotions, just put a hold on it, right? Like take a walk, 30
Hmm.
minutes, an hour, or even just
Yeah.
sleep on it, right? Like the next day is gonna
Hmm.
be a little bit better. You get your
Yeah.
clear
I don't
mind,
think
right?
work should be emotional. And if you find yourself getting emotional with your work, you gotta talk to a therapist, talk to a friend, talk to your business partner. I mean, get emotional with like the loves in your life, sure, like fall in love. I'm not saying to do that, but when it comes to work, like don't get emotional. It's not about that.
Hundred
It's about
percent,
business.
100%.
Yeah.
I think all the founders are superpowers. They're superheroes, right?
Mm,
Every one of them have like their own superpower. What is your superpower?
hmm
What are
mm.
things that you're extremely good at? You can save the world with it.
um, I mean, I think I've built, fortunately, a name for myself in the journalism side. I'm really good at telling stories. I feel like I'm pretty personable in that I could relate to people well. And it always, it's natural. Like if me and someone else aren't like jiving well or whatever, like I'm not going to force it. But I do feel like I have the ability to be personable, and
Be
I
likable.
actually do
That's
really.
really important.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah. And I think like even on that front though, like I'm always honest, and I never would want to do a deal just to make money. I would want to do a deal to better that company and better my company, right? And if I don't feel like we're going to benefit from it, either my company, your company, both of us, then like I'm pretty honest on sales calls where I'm like, listen, I don't think it's a fit. And I feel like a lot of people in the space are just so willing to take money because they could get it.
Mercenary.
And I think
I
that
hated
damages your
it. I
reputation.
hated it.
Yeah.
And like
And
it's
like,
pretty sad. A
so,
lot of people is like that, especially in the crypto space,
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll take an airdrop. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying like in terms of like a professional relationship, um, I'm very cautious and careful about that. I also think just being kind in general pays off in so many ways. Like I really do believe like the energy you put out in the world is the energy you get back. And so if I'm kind, if I'm nice, if I'm friendly, and that's because like that's what makes me feel good, I think I receive that. And if you're a negative person, you're going to be surrounded by other miserable, negative people, or you're going to make the people around you miserable. And so for me, I'm always trying to be, the nicest version of myself. Obviously, I'm a little sarcastic, joking, whatever, but like I always do try to be kind to
Yes,
others. And you never know what people are going through, and like I think just being a good person pays off. And even if it doesn't pay off, it feels better to be a good person than not.
I agree. Positivity attract people with the same energy, right? Same as negativity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna put you on the hot seat. Can you give us
Go
some of
ahead.
the extremely hot take, controversial takes that you have lately? It can be about like
Mm,
our industry, specific things that are happening, the mindshare market,
hmm
like, but basically give us something that is the hotter the better.
mm. I don't know. Like I'm sick of all the tokens. I'm sick of pumped up
you mean
fun.
you mean we
I'm
not only
sick.
VC tokens, you're just sick of all the tokens.
Well, okay. I, it's so funny because like there was a time where people would joke about utility tokens and be like, "Who cares?"
I
Like we
remember
want
that.
fun ones,
I
and
remember that.
and yeah, and then like now we got all these fun ones, and I'm like, okay, enough. Like, or it's not even fun anymore. Like I think I tweeted this the other day where I was like, pumped up fun, but like it's actually fun. Let's like create one where it's actually fun because like getting rug pulled over and over and over, and like I really don't engage in day trading like that. I don't have the time, but like just seeing it on charts, my timeline, different CAs, like it's devastating to look at, and I'm sick of all these rug pulls and how easy it is to do it. It is crazy. Like if you have a following and you could just get out there and just post a CA, and then all of a sudden you could raise it, and then like, or people would buy
You can
into it, and then
dump
you
it,
just,
which is just
yeah, I
terrible.
mean, we all know what a rug pull is, but like it drives me crazy. And I think it really, like, crypto is already such a distrusting industry, and it just adds to that. And it doesn't make us look better. And very, very few people are getting rich off all of these token launches, right? And it's just, I'm just not a fan. I'm sick of the fact that anyone could launch a token. It should be a little bit harder to launch a token. And it's so funny because, like, before Pump Fun and all these different, like, token launch platforms, we had a different opinion where it's like, why is it that like not everyone could launch a token,
Yeah, yeah.
and now we're on this side and we've seen the reality of just like chaos and mayhem, and I'm like, maybe we should go to a middle ground where it's like not everyone can launch a token, but not nobody but the big names can. Let's meet somewhere where it's like thoughtful
I actually think
launches.
that is a pretty good
um
idea, you know.
if you're listening, go create it.
I think that makes
um I also think like I think the joke of on-chain crime is funny. And I've definitely said it before. I'm like, oh, on-chain crime is legal, whatever. And I'm definitely not the one committing it, but I think it's almost like we don't hold people responsible in this industry.
100%.
Like, who are the people rug pulling over and over and over? Are we not gonna find out who they are and then like publicly shun them? Or like the KOLs, I also just don't like the name KOL. It drives me crazy.
I don't like it too.
That's another hot
I
take.
like the word researcher, like independent researcher a lot better, right?
Or like,
KOL
market player, key opinion, oh God, key opinion leader is just so like, I hate it. I can't stand it. And like, I think KOLs are just like people who take money and chill. They're not actually key opinion leaders. There's a different, like, the actual term versus who they actually are very different. And I think it's ruined kind of like the ability to like market your product because so many people think they need to pay KOLs or just get KOLs on board. And I'm like, the reality of having them on board isn't necessarily a good one. And these people aren't adding a net positive, even if they have all the followers, them talking about you isn't going to bring,
right? Like
and yeah,
99%
they're not even real. They're not even real. I could go on about KOLs all day. And I think the whole KOL market is just like so saturated. These people aren't in it for the right reasons. And again, like, I wouldn't take a check for anything. I would take a check if it made sense, but I think a lot of KOLs just take a check because it's money and they don't care about the reality or the outcome of what they're doing. So
and
those are my rifes. Those are my two big rifes right now.
I like that. Those need to be corrected. I don't like them either.
Yeah.
I really hated
Yeah.
the word KOL too. What do you think?
I said let's leave KOLs in 2024.
I like that, but sadly, I think this will continue probably going on for another year or so at least.
Yep.
But I actually think people started to realize. I see a lot of the good, like before they call themselves KOLs, but right now they call themselves researchers, right? Or because they started.
Oh, are they?
Someone in the Chinese community, yes. So I think that is
okay.
pretty good.
Okay.
What do you?
Well, I'll see their research and then I'll judge.
Yeah. What do you think about the VC coins? I mean, you see
the
VC coins, right? Like the retail investors like to call them the VC tokens, right? Extremely high valuation, go on big centralized exchanges, and die, right? And then like, what do you see a future in that? Like,
I think if a team is willing to raise money, then there's always, and then they're gonna do a TGE, then yes, there will always be VC backed coins. And I think it is too, VC's incentives to buy the coins. They probably buy it at a discount, right? And then they maybe buy some in bulk and whatever. I'm not on the VC side of things, but I've had dozens of conversations with VCs throughout the years, given that I worked at TechCrunch. And I just even did a podcast recently with Dragonfly's Tom Schmidt. And we did talk about kind of the hatred towards VCs and VC coins and everything. And his emphasis on it was that a lot of VCs are locked up anyways. And so like, even if they bought the coin today
for a year or so,
and
right?
Yeah, well, it could be anything from like a year to 3 years to 5 years, really, or anything else in between. But he was saying that for some of the coins, there was finger pointing at VC saying, "Oh, you're the one dumping it," but he said like their vesting wasn't even up.
Yeah.
So then I said, okay, then who's the one dumping it?
The project themselves.
He was saying the retail. He was saying it was retail, and so I'm like, wait, is it kind of like that spider? Yeah, that's what he said. He said it's like the Spider-Man meme where it's like you're pointing at each other.
That's so funny,
right? And I mean, who knows? I'm not the one looking on chain. I think VC-backed coins or coins that are backed by VCs definitely, it's not that it serves a purpose, but I understand why a lot of projects do it. It adds to the liquidity. It adds to maybe the validity of the project. Like, hey, this VC bought this much tokens, right? But then, like you said, there is the concern of them eventually dumping once the vesting period is up, or maybe there are terms that aren't necessarily public to the rest of, retail or the ecosystem in general. I don't have the perfect answer to what the solution is, but I feel like there should be a better one. I understand the feelings that people have in this space towards it.
And also, like, just stand in the VC coins defense, right? Like, it's still a different game, right? People are talking about like you can launch your asset 100% on chain on a DEX. It's still like different, right? The resources not only like standing in like a monetary side of things, not only them, but like their knowledge, their people they know they can help. It's a different game, right? So it's
Yeah.
still, I think VC coins will be here, but probably it's gonna be like a little bit more transparency, probably, right? And then with
Ideally.
ideally with certain
Yeah.
other innovations. But yeah, thanks for your take on the VC coins.
Of course.
The next question I have is the typical question of our podcast, the Tales of Web3 podcast, which is, please share the most interesting story of all these years in your crypto journey, right? It can be involved about like risk taking. It can have unexpected twist, full of randomness. It can be something done that is silly but still fun. But I want this to be the story of you that when other people hear about it, they know this is only something that Jacquelyn can do, right? And this is something that you've done in the past that shaped who you are today as a founder. So the stage is yours.
That's tough. Okay.
No,
I had a few things that came to mind.
Take your time. Think about it.
That shaped who I am. Okay, I have a few funny ones, and then like maybe it's not one specific moment, but like a collection of moments where it's like I've moderated a lot of panels over the years, and so for me, the first time I ever moderated, I was getting on stage and I had heels on, and like it was like literally 3 little steps. I was like so terrified. I had these like no cards in my hands were shaking. And the co-founder of Blockworks was getting off stage, and I was about to get on because it was a Blockworks event, and they wanted the reporters to moderate. And so I was like, okay, sure, like I'll do it. I hate public speaking, but I'll get up there. And this is the first time I've ever moderated in my life. And I'm walking up these stairs, and as I'm walking up these stairs, my heel gets caught on the stairs, and my shoe just comes off. And like, there's an audience of like 2,000 people, and the co-founder of Blockworks, Mike Ippolito, looks at me, and he knows how scared I am, and he's like, "You're fine." He's like, "You're fine. Just pick up your shoe." And I was like, yeah, okay. And I take my shoe and I walk up stage and I sit down and I'm like,
and you
I made a joke. I said something where I was like, "I'm sorry, guys. No free foot pics. Let me put my shoe back on," or something. And like the audience laughed, and then we did the whole panel and whatever. And like, it's so crazy because like looking back, the worst thing that could have possibly happened, which is like public embarrassment, did. And you know, it kind of goes back to my point about like, you're always going to be okay, you know? And I made a joke about it, and we moved on, and we did a great panel, and, you know, people allegedly said they loved it. Maybe they were making me feel better. But since then, you know, I've moderated like dozens, if not hundreds of panels on stage, and like so many of the major crypto conferences around the world with like really big people, right? Yeah, like I was at Korea Blockchain Week, and I was on the stage with like Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse. You know, I've talked to Mike Novogratz. I've talked to all these different people on stage, and like that was the first level. And then like I've obviously accelerated and grown as former reporter, you know, moderator, all these different things. And like it's just so funny looking back how like poorly that happened. And like, of course, the first time I do it, it goes horribly. Like me walking into the situation. And so that's one. And then another thing I thought of was like before the Terra Luna collapse, I was at TechCrunch, and I was supposed to interview Do Kwon.
Oh shit.
His PR team, yeah. His PR team reached out to me. They're like, "Oh, he's about to go on paternity leave. He's about to have a baby, but we would love to set up an interview with you." And I was like, "Okay." Like, I know who Do Kwon is. Sure, I'll do it. And we were in different time zones. I think he was in Korea at the time. So like it would be 12-hour difference. So if I was doing a call with him, it was like the first time we set up a call, it was like 7 in the morning, 7 p.m. his time. And I joined the call. I'm like waking up for this, you know. I wake up earlier now, but at the time I wasn't. And so I wake up, I get on this freaking call, and he doesn't show up. And I'm fucking livid. And I'm like, this guy didn't come, fuck this, whatever. And obviously I'm really polite about it. I reach out to the team and I'm like, "Hey, like Joe never showed up. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, how about tomorrow, the same time, but reversed. So now he's going to get up at 7 a.m. for me, and I'm going to get up
Please
at
don't tell me
or
he
I'm going
did
to
it
be on at
again.
7 p.m.
Please don't tell
Yeah,
me.
yeah. No. So he actually does show up this time. And we do an interview, and he tells me something that he was like, oh, like, I was actually going to save that for Bloomberg, but I just told you,
Oh.
And essentially it was that at the time that the stablecoin was going to be backed by a bucket of assets. Because at the time it was only like an algorithmic
Yes,
stablecoin.
yes.
I believe it was like just Bitcoin backed or whatever. And he essentially said, like, we're going to branch it out to a bunch of different things. And I'm sitting there like, this guy just told me something that he was going to tell Bloomberg. That's fucking sick. Like, let me go write this. And I brought it to my editor at the time. And my editor was like, I don't think we should write this. And I was
Oh.
like, what? And he was like, nobody knows who Do Kwon is. Nobody cares about Do Kwon.
Wait, what?
And
Why?
I know. And I was like, okay. I go to a different editor and I say, I want to write this story. This guy doesn't want me to do it. And he said, like, go for it. Like, don't let him tell you no.
That's
If you
nice.
think it's important, do it.
Yes.
And so I write the story, I get it out. And this was a month before the Terra Luna collapse.
Damn.
And so when Terra Luna collapsed, that editor who said no, he goes, oh shit, I guess this guy is a big deal. Good job on that story. And I was like, yeah, how about that? And so I think that kind of points to like, one, maybe you should always like push for things if you really do believe you should do it. With the Do Kwon thing, like I could have just,
Just walk
sat on my
away.
hands and
Yeah.
done nothing because my editor said no. But then I went to someone else and they believed in me and they were like, they didn't know who Do Kwon was, this other editor, but they were like, yeah, if you feel passionately about it, do it. And it's so funny because we did report it, and I'm pretty sure Bloomberg reported it after, like an
Nice.
exclusive, and I was like, we were first.
Let's go.
And then a month later everything collapses and it was absolute chaos. But that was a pretty wild story to do, and also the fact that he was late and didn't show up, and then very probably on brand for the guy. I'm not sure. It was on brand for my relationship, but yeah.
I like the story. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Of course.
Before we end, can you please leave one prediction you have for our industry, for crypto in 2025? Where are we heading out to next?
Yes, good question. I'm not heavily involved in this space, but I do cover it. I think that tokenization and real world assets are going to be the most obvious winner for this year. I think institutions have insane amount of capital that even whales or retail don't have.
RWAs.
And yes, real world assets. And so I think the proliferation and growth of real world assets, tokenization on chain, is going to expand this industry in ways that we couldn't even imagine. And I think that's going to be a really big winner this year. With like things like Apollo and BlackRock and other funds really getting in on chain and appealing to both, the crypto audience, but then bringing these institutional investors into the space in like a way that fits their frameworks. It's just like a no-brainer. And it gives so much more access to things that were previously private or uninvestable. I don't know if that's a word, but
I like the word.
it opens up the possibilities of what's able to be tokenized. And I think that's sick. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think that's going to be a really big play this year.
I think so too. I'm pretty bullish on Ondo, Plum, and like the rest of like these RWA protocols. That's awesome. Yeah. All right, before you go, please show hard for us about anything you guys are doing at Token Relations. How can retail investors find you guys? How can they support? How can they join? How can the businesses, right, the ecosystems, the chains, how they can work with you guys?
100%. Okay, if you want to follow the ecosystems we work with over a dozen ecosystems, from Avalanche, Aptos, Optimism, Polygon, Injective, Say, Ripple, all these different ones. We work with them. We're covering Solana too. You could go to token-relations.com. You could subscribe there. I also have a podcast, Talking Tokens, separate from Token Relations, but under the whole umbrella. Bring on amazing guests throughout the ecosystem. Always fun. And if you are an ecosystem or a project, protocol, blockchain, and you want to like expand it and or engage your ecosystem better, come reach out to us. Love to talk to you, see how we could work together.
Let's go. Awesome.
Then let's
And
go.
yeah,
Amazing.
here we wrap up this amazing episode. Thank you, Jacquelyn.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.